this is a really special moment for the three of us because we have never really been in conversation with each other formally ever before, despite working together for almost 8 years at this point, building from scratch what has grown into a wonderful initiative that is really meaningful and special to all of us. Prameya Foundation locates itself as an institutional framework that's nomadic, which does not have a physical presence in Delhi. And while we work out of Delhi, we are very focused on the fact that our immediate concern is the city in itself and then the South Asia constellation. And that's how we work. We try to move and extend beyond ambiguous national categorizations and territories in our region, because we really believe that histories are constantly in flux and eroding and mutating all the time. And we try to think about the South Asian arts community as something that is consistently in conversation, despite rigorous political borderlines and what they may enable and what they may disenable. So we started working together 8 years ago, and the foundation has formally been in existence for 7 at this point. And when we started working together, we thought about how we could locate Prameya Foundation art historically within the South Asian context as well, where there is such a rich history of artist-run institutions and artists as pedagogues and institution builders coming together to rethink infrastructures and enable possibilities and create new waves of art making in the region. And we figured none of us are artists here. Anahita and Shefali at that point had been running a commercial gallery for 10 years and had a decade's experience in the arts. I had been working in the arts for close to a decade at that point, and mostly as a writer and recently as a curator at that point of time. And considering the discursive richness of the South Asian context, where discourse has always been part of it, when we go back to the Bengal school and we think about how an emergent identity during the colonial rule itself was configured. It was through letter writing and through conversations and ideas around what art should be. And then continuing within the Indian context with the Baroda school, artists as pedagogues coming together to rethink what art should be critically and politically. And then we had the emergence of the contemporary art movement in South Asia, which happened together through the Triangle Arts Network between Brito in Bangladesh and Vasil in Pakistan, Tirtha in Sri Lanka, Khoj in India, and also Siddhartha in Nepal, coming together to rethink what contemporary art could be in the South Asian context. So while there was this kind of discursiveness that was very present in the South Asian region, we felt that what was really missing were reliable, consistent support structures for certain kinds of art making in the region. And that's really where we saw us filling a lacuna within the arts context. And we thought about making and thinking together as discursive formations, as knowledge making, as pedagogy. And that's also why we thought to title this conversation support structures as alternative pedagogies. Yes, while there are wonderful ideas, how do we enable these ideas to translate into experiments and formal innovations and production in ways that artists dream of in many ways? So I will, with this introduction, I will leave it to Anahita and Shefali to also tell us a little bit about why they thought to set up this initiative that is Prameya Foundation, and which happened before they invited me to come and work with them and together shape it into what it has become today.
So Anahita and me started the gallery, and we'd been running it for 10 years. When we realized that there are a lot of small lacunas, as Anushka mentioned, in the system, and there was no support for these. And as a commercial gallery, we felt that, there wasn't anything we could do to support this, because our activities were very driven by artists and selling artists. So we set up Prameya Foundation to look into these lacunas and sort of provide support structures for these gaps. Initially, the gallery was actually, we dedicated a part of our, whatever the gallery made towards, supporting these different initiatives. And we brought Anushka on board because we had started this program at the gallery called the Arts Prize program. But it was absolute, it was like really fitting into the Prameya purview. So we moved it to Prameya, and that was the first program we started with. And I mean, Anushka has been leading the foundation since then. And I think the first program we did together was a participatory where we invited Sue Williamson. And Anushka is going to tell us a little bit more about that a little later. But do you want to add something to this, Anahita?
So I think what was interesting is that we met Anushka because she was a recipient of the Arts Scribes Award. But we had similar vision and an ideas regarding the foundation, regarding how we wanted to build it, regarding how we wanted to create these support structures. And I think it all came together very organically. And we came with a vision of, sort of filling those lacunas with programs and initiatives where we felt we could create certain platforms and be invested in it as much as possible, because as gallerists I felt we understood those gaps in the system, and we could create those platforms for whether it was curators, whether it was writers, whether it were artists, and help in sort of initiating specially commissioned programs and a lot of things that we felt we couldn't do through the gallery. We wanted to kind of do through the foundation, and I think in the last 7 years that we've been together, we every year keep sort of developing on more and more such initiatives and creating a platform which can sort of extend itself as much as possible.
And also, we've been strengthening our existing programs year on year. So, we tend to at least do all of our programming for several years so that it makes an impact.
And I feel that just to kind of add to that over the conversations that we've had, South Asia is also a very particular context where there isn't as much, while there is a concept of patronage and patron-led institutions and collections, there isn't as much philanthropy towards the arts. And that is something that we wanted to kind of rethink and reconstitute by working together and building various partnerships where we do things together collectively in collaboration with other institutions as well, rather than make it a collection. So one of the things that we are very particular about is that we do not ever intend to be a collection-based institution, and we do not intend to program around an existing collection. And all the commissions that we enable, the works belong to the artists themselves. And so that focus really frees us in a context which is primarily market-driven, even though galleries extend themselves beyond their mandate to support the arts context as much as possible. In a context that's primarily market-driven, we felt that this was necessary to enable forms of art making and curatorial work that could extend and transcend existing imagination of what such work could be.
And I'd like to add to that as well. Back home in India, we don't have that kind of government support and infrastructure which gives that kind of, in form of funding to foundations or initiatives. So for us, we actually sort of donate a percentage of the gallery's profits to Prameya Art Foundation. So we have a sustained support and programming where we don't have to rely on the government or any other sort of institution for support. But we do then build various conversations with collaborate with institutions internationally also to collaboratively do these initiatives.
Absolutely. And our ways of working together, as I mentioned earlier, while extending beyond national frameworks, given national frameworks, it's also been interesting for us to build contextual solidarities and translocal solidarities, one could say. Because, I mean, India being the diverse context that it is, South Asia being the diverse context that it is, while there are historical simultaneities and various shared concerns within the region itself, we also realize that there are hyper local contexts within which artistic practices are located, which might perhaps have more in common with other geographies and concerns of other communities as well, rather than even perhaps, I mean, the even within two cities such as Delhi and Calcutta. The difference in the kind of arts context and the concerns of artists and the political realities that they respond to can perhaps be very, very far apart. So, building these kind of solidarities with other global contexts was something that was also important to us, and strengthen partnerships and build a network that could be supportive and think through shared concerns and limitations, infrastructural limitations, and ideas that could
Sure.
cross pollinate and grow through that from that perspective.
Anushka, you have spoken about the fact that we focus on South Asia, but I want you to also like speak about the fact that why did we and expand on the fact that why did we choose South Asia instead of just focusing our energies on India?
um a lot of so one of for I will speak about it from my practice as well. A lot of my early research was looking at political and cultural trauma within the Indian context. And then the further I worked on it, I realized that it's impossible to speak about India in isolation, especially when it comes to communal conflicts. And it dates back to further, way beyond nation formation. And the futures that we envision for the region itself should necessarily transcend beyond these national frameworks. So within my curatorial practice as well, I don't think I've ever curated an exhibition with just Indian artists ever. So that is also something that's been really important to me personally as well. And in our work together, of course, the global networks that we try to build and transnational solidarities that we try to build, of course, has been a driving force in this concern. But it's also a legacy that we've inherited from the desires of a previous generation of artists and curators working together, working against all odds and political circumstances to build a shared sense of community within the region that is South Asia, and to not undo the work that had already been done, but try to continue that when these borders were becoming even more rigid since we've started working together. And so wherever possible, when shipping isn't involved most often, we try to work with South Asia as a region and extend, and also realizing that the support structures that we identify as missing in India, they're perhaps even more so in other contexts that we've learned so much from, we've shared so much with. And that is also one of the reasons why we decided to extend beyond the national framework and look at South Asia as a whole, and also build, whenever we build, we also realize that India as an arts context can be a little insular in the sense that most of the art that you see in India is by Indian artists. And a lot of Indian collections primarily feature work by Indian artists. And we felt that there was a lot of room for more dialogue with global context. And that's also why this invitation from Asia Now was so special to us, to be able to bring work from the region to Paris, for instance. And so that was something that we wanted to break out of. So one of the first projects that we launched with was the exhibition of Sue Williamson, a South African artist and anti-apartheid activist, coming to India at a crucial year such as 2016 to really think about Delhi and its context, and the diverse opinions that exist among its residents and in in terms of what their city could offer and couldn't offer. So that was really a project that was special to us to start with, and to kind of really also as exhibition making as a pedagogic exercise, in the sense that we realized that while we could support residencies, we would see one artist traveling to an international context and looking at art and interacting with artists, looking at exhibitions and interacting with curators there. Whereas if we invite a really significant practice such as Sue Williamson's to Delhi, and prior to the exhibition, make it so, structure the program so that the artist spends 2 weeks to a month in the city prior to the opening of the exhibition, so that the talks and the programs that one usually envisions after the opening of the exhibition happens prior. So there would perhaps be a workshop or a collaborative commission that we sometimes are able to support, and leading up to the opening of the exhibition, so that the artist also develops an understanding of the context in which they are showing the work, making it all the more meaningful. Because the way we operate in the contemporary art circuit, sometimes we realize that, I mean, it's very important for work to travel, of course, but the fact that sometimes work just travels from institution to institution to institution without really the artist even being present, we wanted to kind of break out of that and look at the pedagogic possibilities of exhibition making, and how younger creative practitioners may be inspired by different methods of working or different approaches to art making as well within the context, was something that was really important.
Yeah. And I think it was like a very interesting, because it was our first program together. And I still remember we had all these young students, and so like taking them through this workshop, it was quite the experience. And then all of them going out into the city to collect material, to we come back into the into our space and speak about what they found, and like rethinking the idea of what the city meant to them. I think it was a really great exercise even for these young practitioners.
Yeah, so that was a project that we've continued since as well, and think about exhibitions as spaces that enable a lot more than just exhibition narratives and works being presented. That's something that's always been important to us. So in these various ways, we have tried to kind of extend beyond the national framework and kind of work in various ways, and also challenge the existing arts context and arts infrastructure. We realized that there are artist studios and artist-run institutions that are committed to discursive encounters and gatherings and incidents, but we wanted to really support, not extend that with actual infrastructure that would enable production of artwork as well, and exhibitions.
Shall we leave it then?
Yeah. We'd like to take you through some of our recent programs.
So this is one of the recent programs that we launched last year. It was in collaboration with the Han Nefkin Foundation, which is based in Barcelona. And as maybe some of you know, Han Nefkin Foundation has done various video production grants. And at that point of time, they had launched the Southeast Asian Video Production Grant, and Prameya Foundation was a partner for that. We kind of were very interested that Han Nefkin would sort of extend the video production grant to South Asia as well. And that's when Prameya Foundation collaborated with them to create this grant. And we felt that that the importance of partnering with various other institutions would extend that support to the artist who sort of is a recipient for the grant. And we tied up with with Nottingham Contemporary, Ishara Art Foundation, Museum of Contemporary Art Tokyo, Museum of Contemporary Art Antwerp, and Parasite. And there was a great energy around it. Everyone was, sort of excited to be on board for this grant, and we all met together. And I think these are great moments where we can exchange our thoughts and ideas as institutions and work collectively, as much as possible to sort of create these grants and various exhibitions that we try to do through the foundation. And the recipient for last year was Shahana Rajni, and we're looking forward to working with her in the future, and sort of creating that exhibition at Prameya Art Foundation.
And for instance, just to kind of add to that, Shahana's practice through Karachi La Jamia and through her independent practice has been extremely research focused, experimental. She devises curriculum for local communities based in Karachi, including the fishing community based in Karachi, which has been displaced from the Indus Delta. And these are not the kind of practices that would fit into spaces that could traditionally be envisioned in a context like South Asia, for instance, in the gallery frameworks, or even receive funding to kind of continue the work that she is doing. And through this grant, she will not just have her first solo exhibition with us, but also with a few of the other institutions that have decided to partner with it. And then to kind of extend the conversations that already exist within her work into a full solo exhibition is something that wouldn't have happened otherwise, perhaps, for a practice such as this.
Do we have?
Yeah, so this is another project that is really special to us. This is one of the first projects that we conceptualized, but one of the more recent projects to have that we were able to unveil, because it took us 4 years to gather the partners and the networks that we needed to kind of set this in place. We realized that there are several artists who are interested in working with publishing, who think through publishing as well, but there wasn't really a publishing grant for artist books specifically, not catalogs or monographs, but artist books specifically. And also, given our interest in extending audiences for contemporary art in our context, we thought that publishing and also mass production of an artist book, which can be affordably priced, which can be available at local bookstores, also to audiences that may not be aware of contemporary art conversations that exist in certain small circles and urban spaces, was also something that was important to us. So we partnered with Rolly Books, who is a publisher, and Sahil Nayak received the first grant, which would support his research and printing, production, and also distribution of the publication. And we've kind of also imagined the funding format in a way that it can kind of sustain itself, so that it can kind of also inform a second print run of the same publication. And for this, we partnered with local institutions across South Asia who have intimate knowledge of the context and the spaces that they live and work within. And we work together with them to identify practices that are interested in publishing, relevant to the local context within which they live and work in. And then we invite an international jury to review a shortlist and choose the final recipient of the grant. So even for the Han Nefkins grant, this was also in collaboration, this was conceived in collaboration with the Han Nefkins Foundation, but there are local scouts who identify nominees who are then considered by a jury. So this the understanding that there are certain local nuances to practices that may be lost when we look at it from a more global or a regional perspective is something that we've been very aware of. So our partners in the region have been very special to this project as well. And Sahil's book, which was chosen by an international jury, looks at two fires, one at the Baliganj Zoology Department, Baliganj University Zoology Department, and another at the Natural Sciences, the Natural History Museum in Delhi in 2012, and how these two fires destroyed an entire archive of problematic but still specimens of very rare specimens of natural history that have since disappeared. And then through anecdotes and various found material on the internet, and also in other museums, sister museums of these museums that burned down, he tries to recreate a public memory of the specimens that disappeared in these fires and what the lore around them is, from diplomatic relations to ecological crisis to various others. So the publication plots these points and looks at these meandering but interconnected histories very closely. So the book will be out very soon, next month, and we are really looking forward to it, and we're excited about how it's shaped up. And we're currently in the process of receiving applications for the second edition of this grant as well. And because we realized that a grant like this was very new in the South Asian context, discourse around it was really important to us. So we curated a selection of artist books that were meant to be unlimited editions from India, the invitation of Sharjah Art Foundation's Focal Point, and we presented the selection of publications there. And it later traveled to the India Art Fair as well. And now it remains as a resource. The list of publications remain as a resource on our website for other practitioners who might be interested in working with publishing and publications and would like to look at references that they may be inspired by. And we also have done talks, Ask Me Anything sessions with artists who've been working with publishing for a really long time, where emerging practitioners can freely address their questions. We don't set any limitation. There's no question that is too simple or too complex to be addressed in those forums. So we try to create open spaces where one can address questions and considerations and anxieties in ways that feel safe. We've also tried to organize workshops in makeshift studios where artists who recently graduated from their MFA programs and are kind of rethinking their practices outside of institutional context can experiment with ideas and work on proposals, not necessarily proposals, but work on ideas rather than an artwork. So the emphasis was on presenting an idea for an artwork rather than emphasizing on the final finished outcome or or a work of art. So these were a couple of experiments that we did. But then we also realized that there are workshops such as this that other institutions are also engaged with. So as it's always been important to us to not reiterate support structures in a way. So we decided to discontinue that briefly and rethink its relevance.
Yeah. Now this is a program that we started 4 years ago. It's called PAIR, Praf Artist in Residence, and it's a grant that we give out to a mid-career artist, and we've had, like, I think our fourth artist is in residence currently at the Cité International. We partnered with the Institut Français in Delhi and Cité International in Paris. And the recipient of this grant gets to spend 3 months in residence at Cité International. And Louise, who's currently there, she's just reached a couple of days ago. And so she's quite excited about being here in Paris currently. We actually started this because we felt that there were support structures for younger artists, and senior artists, of course, don't require that. But mid-career artists many times fall through the cracks, and they don't have support systems. They don't have engagement outside their studios with other practitioners. And so this provides them, while they're in residence at Cité, they get to meet curators, they get to go visit and do visits with other artists in their studios. So I think it's really been, we've got a really good feedback on our program.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, again, in response to a context that's sustained by market structures, to think about how young and emerging become buzzwords that are very often celebrated. But then there are mid career artists who are interested in rethinking directions within their own practice and would perhaps enjoy time and space to rethink that was something that was important to us also because we do not expect them to produce any work during this time. We do not expect them to write proposals of what they intend to do during this residency. We don't expect grant reports at the end of the residency or project reports at the end of the residency. So then this really becomes a space for them to actually just think and explore their own practices and further directions. And also Cité des Arts being such a global context with artists from many parts of the world at all points of time, we felt that this would also be a space where our interest in with other relatable global contexts and build networks as well. And these are some of the projects that have emerged from this residency. Hemant Srikumar, who was the recipient of the first residency program during his time, really worked with sound technology that wasn't even available in India for him to really experiment with, and archives, and created a cassette tape of that mirrored the cacophony of information flows on the internet. And that was a really special project. And it was one of our first commissions ever as an institution. Yeah. Then when Karan Sreshta was there, he created a body of work which went on to be exhibited in Paris as well. And Debashish Paul worked on a performance which was also exhibited at Cité des Arts. And many of them have continued to show and work in Paris since this residency experience, which has also been really great for us.
Karan actually come back to City after this.
Yeah, another residency.
Yeah.
And we also try to enable commissions of new work whenever we are able to, whenever you're able to fundraise for them as well, and mostly focused on sound. So one of the first projects that we worked on was Baran Ajlal's Change Room. Baran at that point of time, even though she's a prolific artist, hadn't shown in her own city, Delhi, for 7 years at that point. So this was really kind of, in a way, for her, a very important showing of a project that she had been working on for years at that point of time, gathering narratives from some of the most marginalized communities in the city and the region, actually, and present it as a sound installation where people can really listen and engage. And these narratives are shared anonymously and with the intent to create awareness around the realities of their situation rather than in ways that are safe again. And that was really important to us, and we were able to present this at the India Art Fair where it received enthusiastic engagement. And of course, Somani Suri, who's one of the leading sound artists in India, worked on her first sculptural project, which was kind of like based on her extensive research around the linguistic survey of India archives and looking at the crackles in the tape and the crackles in the recordings and as these ghost tapes, and thinking about the voices that are concealed, the hysteria that is concealed within those crackles and the gaps within those recordings. And she created this kind of warm, living, breathing, almost body-like buccal cavity of the mouth for these utterances to emerge from. And you hear them as one body moves closer to another body-like formation, which was something that we worked on as well. Would you like to speak about that?
Um, so as we spoke about PRAF Participatory being one of our first programs at the foundation, we showed Sue Williamson's project, and post that we'd also, which I think Anushka has spoken about, so I won't expand on that. But we after that had brought Paul Wong from Canada, and it was, I think, one of the most interesting exchanges. Paul Wong had visited the Shishi School of Design and worked with students there who were sort of training under new media programs. And I think it was such an interesting exchange. He stayed with them for almost, I think, 1 month, and stayed within the facilities and interacted on a daily basis and worked finally on this exhibition, which they did collaboratively. And I think just the whole learning experience of that, just the exchange of dialogues, created. I think it was important for that exchange and program. And further, we brought in Braha Ettinger, though that was during the COVID years, and she interacted online with with students, psychoanalysts, and I think again we also kind of brought that into a publication with the French Institute in collaboration with them, and which had work of the artists and theorists who were involved in it, and of Braha herself as well. And I think that's again it's very important for us to also sort of document these conversations, and then sort of try and spread it as far as we can.
Yeah, so after our work with Paul Wong, we also invited Yoshinori Niva, who is a fantastic thinker when it comes to working with his practice through performative methods that are subversive of existing economic structures in our arts context. And we invited him to India for a month and commissioned a work while he was here, and which involved putting up posters in public spaces to think about the city's residents' relationship with their own material belongings, and how they would feel if he were to rent all of their possessions for a period of 1 month and they had to live without it, of course, in exchange for a fee. So that was a fun project that we worked on, which brought in people from diverse walks of life into the framework of the exhibition. And for instance, people who had lost money in the stock exchange, who were willing to rent their belongings for a period of 1 month in return for 100,000 rupees, or a taxi driver who had just lost his job the day before walked in and said that this could really help him at this point in his life. Young artists who were struggling for production money. And we ultimately went with a young artist who needed production money for one of his sculptures. And it turned into a really interesting collaborative project.
We also had one gentleman walk in who thought that this was a big scam.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he wanted to take he wanted to know everything about what we were doing. And then thankfully he realized that no, we're serious about what we're doing. And otherwise he was like all ready to like say that now you come to the police station with us.
Yeah, I mean, it's also working with scam aesthetics in a way, and in various ways. So these exhibitions, however small, have been really meaningful to the context in Delhi, because otherwise there aren't really a lot of spaces where one gets to see work like this.
And also, I think, also extending yourself beyond the White Cube space and going forward into, literally into streets, into communities, and getting different kinds of audiences to interact with the art and the work that you're doing. I think that's what makes it a lot more exciting.
And Praha's exhibition, Anahita already spoke about, but it was also for us an interesting way during COVID years to think about publishing as exhibition making as well. So it was a collaborative publication where Braha's theoretical texts and artwork interacted and dialogued with the existing practices of art historians, curators, psychoanalysts, and artists based in the city during those years.
So Arts Critics Award was initially started by the gallery, by Shefali and me. And we, at that point time, there wasn't much sort of focus given to like sort of curators or any sort of a grant for curators or exhibition making at that point of time. So we started this where we collaborated with the Gwangju Museum of Art, and the first recipient of this grant had gone there for a period of 1 month, and then came back, and we had a separate exhibition grant for the recipient, and then they produced their exhibition after that. And year on year, we've been focusing and sort of doing the Art Scribes Award, and it's brought together, I think, amazing conversations, experimental projects, and 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 also I think the ability to create that dialogue within the space. I think it's one of our most successful initiatives, just because I think all the curators that have come out of it have sort of gone ahead to curate very successful, biennales and triennales across the world, and also for the fact that we met Anushka, our head curator, through the same initiative. And I think it just sort of creates a lot of these possibilities, and we don't end it with just sort of giving this grant. We continue that relationship going forward, and I think a lot more initiatives sort of get given to those curators, and we keep that dialogue sort of going.
And also, given that there are no graduate or undergraduate programs for curatorial studies in that context, this is kind of over the years emerged as a space where critical thinkers and writers and researchers have a space to experiment with curatorial narratives, basically telling their story spatially. And the possibility of being able to research for a year towards the exhibition, that luxury of time, is also something that sometimes does not easily happen. And these are some of the exhibitions that have come out of the Art Scribes Award. And our next project is going to be Najran Islam's exhibition, which really works with the vernacular to think about legibility and illegibility, especially around documents that relate to identity and proof of existence currently in the Indian context. So we're really looking forward to it, and we're all working towards it at the moment. And these have been some of our recent projects, and we hope that it kind of gives a sense of how we imagine support structures as spaces where mistakes can be made, where learnings may happen, and where exciting ideas may shape and take flight into maybe newer and more interesting projects in the future as well. So we really see our institutional framework as a certain kind of a space where ideas may be born, and they can then work with other institutions, and practices can grow with other institutions and take shape in ways that we can continue to dialogue with. Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, everyone.